Jai Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtottara Shri Śrīmad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Rashila Prabhupada ki Jaya Prabhupada, Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtottara Shri Śrīmad Bhaktivedanta Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananda Kodi Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय. निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे. All glories assembled to all glories assembled to all glories assembled devotees, all glories Shri Guru Gauranga, all glories Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 25, entitled The Glories of Lord Ananta, verses 7 and 8. Dhyayamanaha surasuroraga siddhagandharva vidyadhara muniganeirhi Anavarata Mada Mudidaha Vikrida Vihvala Lochanaha Su Lalita Mukharika Mrtena Pyayamanaha Swaparshata Vibuddha Yudha Patin Abarimalan Raga Nava Tulasika Moda Madhva Asvena Madhyan Madhukara Vrata Madhura Gita Shriyam Vaijayantim Swam Vanamalam Neelavasa Ega Kundalo Hala Kaguti Krita Saubhaga Sundaro Bhujo Bhagavan Mahendro Varendra Iva Kanjanim Kaksham Udara Lilo Bibhrati. So here we can see long words. So one word will be going for about couple of lines. These are compound words. Dhyayamanaha, being meditated upon. Sura, of demigods. Asura, demons. Uraga, snakes. Siddha, inhabitants of Siddhaloka. Gandharva, inhabitants of Gandharvaloka. Vidyadhara, Vidyadharas. Muni, and of great sages. Ganaihi, by groups. Anavarata, constantly. Madamudidaha, delighted by intoxication. Vikrata, moving to and fro. Vihvala, rolling. Lochanaha, whose eyes. Sulalita, excellently composed. Mukharika, of speech. Amritena, by the nectar. Apyayamanaha, pleasing. Sabharshada, his own associate. Vibuddha Yudhapatin, the heads of the different groups of demigods. Aparimlan, never faded. Raga, whose luster. Nava, ever fresh. Tulasika, of the tulasi blossoms. Amoda, by the fragrance. Madhu asavena, and the honey. Madhyan, being intoxicated. Madhugaravrata, of the bees. Madhuragita, by the sweet singing. Shriyam, which is made more beautiful. Vaijayantim, the garland named Vaijayanti. Swam, his own. Vanamalam, garland. Neelavasaha, covered with blue garlands. Garments. Ega Kundalaha, wearing only one earring. Hala Kakuti, on the handle of a plough. Krita, placed. Subhaga, auspicious. Sundara, beautiful. Bhujaha, hands. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maha Indraha, the King of Heaven. Varana Indraha, the elephant. Iva, like. Kanjanim, golden. Kaksham, belt. Udaralilaha, engaged in transcendental pastimes. Bibhrati, wears. Shukadeva Goswami continued, the demigods, the demons, the Uragas, serpentine demigods, the Siddhas, the Gandharvas, the Vidyadharas, and many highly elevated sages constantly offer prayers to the Lord. Because he is intoxicated, the Lord looks bewildered, and his eyes, appearing like flower in a full bloom, move to and fro. He pleases his personal associates, the heads of the demigods, by the sweet vibrations emanating from his mouth. Dressed in bluish garments and wearing a single earring, he holds a plough on his back with his two beautiful and well-constructed hands. Appearing as white as the heavenly King Indra, he wears a golden belt around his waist and a Vaijayanti garland of ever-fresh tulasi blossoms around his neck. Bees, intoxicated by the honey-like fragrance of the tulasi flowers, hum very sweetly around the garland, which thus become more and more beautiful. In this way, the Lord enjoys his magnanimous pastimes. Verse 8. Ya esha evam anushrudo dhyayamano mumukshunam anadikala karma vasana gradhitam avidyamayam hridaya grandhim sattva tamo mayam andar hridayam gada ashu nirbhinnati tasyanubhavan bhagavan Swayam bhuvo naradaha saha tumburuna sabhayam brahmanaha samshlokayam asa. If persons who are very serious about being liberated from material life hear the glories of Anantadev from the mouth of a spiritual master in the chain of disciplic succession, and if they always meditate upon Sankarsana, the Lord enters the core of their heart, vanquishes all the dirty contamination of material modes of nature, and cuts to pieces the hard knot within the heart, which has been tied tightly since time immemorial by the desires to dominate material nature through fruitive activities. Narada Muni, the son of Lord Brahma, always glorifies Anantadev in his father's assembly. There he sings blissful verses of his own composition, accompanied by his stringed instrument or a celestial singer known as Tumburu. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. None of these descriptions of Lord Anantadev are imaginary. They are all transcendental, blissful, and full of actual knowledge. However, unless one hears them directly from a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession, one cannot understand them. This knowledge is delivered to Narada by Lord Brahma, and the great saint Narada, along with his companion Tumburu, distributes it all over the universe. Sometimes the Supreme Personality of Godhead is described as Uttama Shloka, one who is praised by beautiful poetry. Narada composed various poems to glorify Lord Ananta, and therefore the word Samshlokayam Asa, praised by selected poetry, is used in this verse. The Vaishnavas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya belong to the disciplic succession stemming from Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is the spiritual master of Narada. Narada is the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva wrote Śrīmad Bhāgavatam as a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. Therefore, all devotees in the Gaudiya Sampradaya accept the activities of Lord Ananta related in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam as authentic, and they are thus benefited by going back home, back to Godhead. The contamination in the heart of a conditioned soul is like a huge accumulation of garbage created by the three modes of material nature, especially the modes of rajas, passion, and tamas, ignorance. This contamination become manifest in the form of lusty desires and greed for material possessions. As confirmed herein, unless one receives transcendental knowledge in disciplic succession, there is no question of his becoming purified of this contamination. Om Jnanatimiranthaśya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanutam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanyatamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchagalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vranda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhuter Mahatbhir Yema Puro Vibhu Nirmaya Shete Yadamusha Purusha Bhungte Gunan Shodasha Shodashatmaka Solankrishishta Bhagavan Vacham Sime. Hare Krishna. Here we have such a fantastic description of Anantadev is given. The whole chapter is the glories of Lord Anantadev, who is situated at the bottom of the universe, even beneath Patala Loka. He is holding the whole universe on his hood, just like a mustard seed. So it's insignificant for him. At the same time, when we are approaching such far-out descriptions of Anantadev, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we need to be mindful because it could be misconstrued by materialistic people, and also the part of us where we have materialism in our heart. So in other words, it is a challenging topic for materialists, of course, and also a part of us which is contaminated by materialism. Thus, in Sri Shopanishad, it is mentioned that we need to know material knowledge and spiritual knowledge simultaneously. So material knowledge is considered as ignorance. As it is mentioned, vidyam cha avidyam cha yas tat vido ubhayam saha. So one should understand both ubhayam, vidya and avidya. Both ubhayam, both should be understood. And it is qualified, vidyam avidyaya amritam tirtva vidya amritam ashnute. So from ignorance, what happens? We can get only repeated birth and death, mrityum. And amritam, one gets eternal life. So there is a difference between knowledge and ignorance. At the same time, Sri Shopanishad recommends to know both knowledge and nescience simultaneously. The 11th mantra of Sri Shopanishad. This is very much applicable in a devotee's life because when we approach Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, we also need to know the defects of material knowledge. We need to know the defects of materialism and defects of the consumeristic society. It is very important that we know. Otherwise, we will not be able to put our full faith in spiritual life. So if one does put faith on spiritual life and this knowledge simply based on faith and based on just sentiments, it can be challenging when some questions come. If someone challenges. That's why vidya and avidya have to be known simultaneously. For example, we need to know the defects of materialism. Otherwise, we can run after newer and newer products for material enjoyment. You need to get this brand to be happy. And if you already have this brand, then you need to get the latest version. So this is materialism. If we don't understand the nature of materialism, if you don't understand the nature of consumerism, one can easily fall trap of it. So one has to be very careful. If we don't understand that the material world or the material energy will not deliver what it promises, one may toil hard in this material world. So the material energy will promise many things, happiness, satisfaction, enjoyment, many, many things. But that is not really a deliverable. It is never coming to us. There is a temporary sensation of happiness is there, but it is going to go away. So we have to be very careful about that. The same principle is applicable even in terms of material relationships. Sometimes even devotees think, my colleague at work or my childhood friends can know me better. The devotees are not understanding me well. They are always talking about, think about Krishna, chant Krishna's name, do service. They are not really understanding my heart. So even a devotee can think like that, and one may think my colleagues are better people, or those who are materialists. And that is another trap. So we need to know that is also a trap of material energy. I remember a nice story told by Swami Maharaj. he was telling one devotee, after being a devotee for many years, living in the temple, suddenly one thought came to his mind. I have to develop friendship with my childhood friends. And particularly one person was there. So he was thinking, okay, I had to establish friendship with him because we were such good friends. Now I had to go and meet him. So he went into this kind of an illusion that I had to meet my friend. There was no particular Krishna conscious purpose, like I had to preach to him or give a book or nothing like that. So he left the temple. He went to his countryside, wherever it was, and he knocked the door. So his childhood friend came out. So he told, look, we were classmates, we were childhood best friends. So that guy asked straight on the face, so what? So when he heard, so what? Then all the illusion went away. He understood, okay, this was an illusion. So what? It's not a big deal. This is how material friendship is, because they cannot really help us for a long time. They can only bring us down in our Krishna consciousness. They cannot elevate us. So one may take us to a trip in this material world further, and one may lose one's Krishna consciousness. Nothing else is going to happen. So we have to be educated about the nature of material world and defects of this material world. So this is part of our education. So it is not just fantastic stories about Krishna or other incarnations, but defects of material world is very important. And the material knowledge in itself is defective. Important point. Material knowledge in itself is defective. And the methods to acquire material knowledge is defective. We hear in Sri Upanishad, at the very beginning, the 4 defects. To err is human, to be illusioned, and then imperfect senses. And on top of that, one thinks that one knows everything. So, cheating propensity. So this is the material world, and the 4 defects are there with this material knowledge. And even the knowledge acquisition in itself is defective. So, the knowledge can never be perfect. So we have to be very careful about it. Interestingly enough, there were few studies done on research itself. Research on research, okay? How people do conduct research. And there are many, many published works, right? Vrajaraj Prabhu knows about it, all about publications. So there are so many published works, and they started to research on how many of these published results are reproducible. So 2015, they did a study on the field of psychology. How many of these published research works are actually reproducible? Or in other words, are they really true? And in this study, of course, they haven't studied everything, but the works they have studied, they found out that they could only reproduce 40% of the published work. And then they studied some medical field like oncology, and they found that only 10% of the published works were reproducible. So that became a hot topic, and they started probing why such a thing happened. Okay, one can be fraudulent, one can cheat. But they found out that even if one is not cheating and even if one is thoroughly honest, materially speaking, still one is prone to make many kind of mistakes. So there are many kind of illusions that are very prominent. One of them, they called it as hypothesis myopia. Hypothesis myopia. You know myopia, right? Short-sightedness. So you can only see something which is very close to me. So I can see the microphone, but I cannot see anything beyond. So this is hypothesis myopia. One is so short-sighted about their own hypothesis. So that what they do, that they accept only selective evidences which support the hypothesis. Other evidences are discounted. So this is a big problem. Even the evidences which are against this hypothesis, they are not taken seriously. Actually, this is the basis of this famous book written by Michael Cremo. What is his name? Dhruta Karma Prabhu, Forbidden Archaeology. So Forbidden Archaeology is challenging Darwinian evolution. The basis of this book is there are so many evidences that do not support Darwinian evolution. So in accepting and hypothesizing this Darwinian evolution, all these evidences are discounted. And only the evidences that support they take. So selective referencing, selective evidences. So this is one issue, hypothesis myopia. So this is, when it comes to Darwinian evolution, it is not very innocent, but there are a lot of politics involved. There are a lot of politics involved. It is not just a simple thing. So that is called the politics of knowledge, politics in knowledge. Those who speak anything against Darwinian evolution, they lose their academic career. They are banned. There is a very interesting video about this. I forgot the title of the video, but many scientists and academic staff, they speak out how their career got ruined. How their career got ruined because they spoke something against the Darwinian evolution. Some are biologists, some are even astronomers. They spoke something about artificial intelligence. They just mentioned something about artificial intelligence in one of their papers, and they got banned. So that's how it is. So there are a lot of politics in knowledge. So partially, it can be because of the tendency to err, and partially, it is the politics. So this is one kind of problem in acquiring knowledge in the material world. Second, if somebody is shooting, somebody is shooting bullets, and they have a target. Suppose you first shoot all the bullets and you draw bullseyes after shooting around the dense marks of bullets, then it is a bit comical, isn't it? First you shoot, and wherever the bullets have gone, and you draw the bullseye around that. That doesn't make much sense. But even in science, this can happen. Many times that the data that scientists obtain can be very random. But one can create a sensible theory out of those random data. This is another issue. So don't think that the knowledge that the scientists propose are always right, or most of the times it is wrong. And that's why what we studied maybe 20 years back, it's not true now. So our degree can be in ignorance, correct? Because that is not true now. So we got a degree, but it's in ignorance now. Because it's all proven wrong. And that's why it comes to the point of just storytelling. You get some data and you imagine something and creative story writing. So science can even go to that level, and which is true. And it is a lot of science is in this condition. And that's why we need to know that even the process of knowledge acquisition in science is not perfect. And that will lead us to the real knowledge, which is coming from the disciplic succession. When we approach disciplic succession, the first knowledge that we get is there is something beyond matter. That is the starting point. And that is a very critical point. So Srila Prabhupada, when he speaks to new people, he doesn't get into so many fantastic things like, Anantadev or Krishna's pastimes. And that's not our purpose. That we shouldn't speak about all these far out things to new people. Rather, we have to make them think that, there is something beyond matter, and who are we? So that is the beginning point. And if one can accept that, that will help them to go further. In terms of modes of material nature, mode of goodness is really good. We are not about mode of goodness, but mode of goodness, one can be contemplative, one can be reflective, and so one can know that, there is something beyond matter. That is the product of the mode of goodness. Sattvat sanjayate jnanam. So what is that jnanam? I am beyond this matter. So that is the reason Sattvagun, the mode of goodness, is important, because mode of goodness is the window towards transcendence. So mode of goodness is not transcendence, but it's a window towards transcendence. So one can start seeing through the mode of goodness, but we cannot get out through the window. We need a door. So the door is not mode of goodness, But mode of goodness can actually show us that there is something beyond. So that is very important. That's why good habits, good lifestyle, they are helpful. They are conducive to accept that we are beyond matter. But still, the transcendental knowledge is above the mode of goodness. That is in pure goodness. It's a beginning point though. So in Krishna consciousness is a dynamic process. The real knowledge we get from the spiritual master. And the realization of knowledge take place depending on the service attitude in the heart of a devotee, depending on the development of one's own Krishna consciousness. So on one side, we can receive knowledge. Okay, there are verses in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. On one side, we have knowledge that is accessible, which is coming through the disciplic succession. And other side, we are the persons who are actually perceiving this knowledge, trying to understand this knowledge. So we can access this knowledge as much as we are elevated in our Krishna consciousness. So it is not exactly that we are all going to get the same depth of knowledge in Krishna consciousness. It is very much a variable. And that makes the process of Krishna consciousness very dynamic. So the more purified we are, we can access Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam more. And less purified we are, we get less. So there is a direct connection between the state of our Krishna consciousness and the knowledge that we are accessing. And that's so, in practical example, it's a big step in our Krishna consciousness when we start focusing on Krishna's pleasure and spiritual master's pleasure rather than our own gross or subtle sense gratification. So our consciousness can be covered a lot by thoughts of sense gratification, our desires, etc. And when we move away from there to the desire of spiritual master, desire of Krishna, desire of the devotees, then we are making a huge jump in our consciousness. That is a beginning point where we get a deeper access to Shastra. Because now we are not in the center, rather Krishna is in the center. And then the spiritual knowledge will make more sense. So this is actually a very important step in our Krishna consciousness. That happens gradually, it's not a one-day thing. But gradually when we are moving and thinking towards Krishna's pleasure, then this knowledge becomes accessible and we get more realization about it. To give a practical example, anyone can chant Hare Krishna. Even as devotees, we all are chanting 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. However, there is a huge difference in chanting if we chant with strong material desires. For example, just like karmis, I have all my material desires very strongly in my heart. Maybe need to get a house, money, this, that, facilities. Very strong desire. I need recognition, very strong desire. And I will pursue for everything. And on top of that, I will chant 16 rounds. I will get my 16 rounds done. But my objective is something else. One is chanting 16 rounds for sure. But the material desires are very strong. And it is reflected in one's life by one's endeavors. Second, I will endeavor because I need to survive in this world, especially for Agrihastha. I have to survive in this world. I will endeavor, I may need a house, I may need a job, I need a bank balance, that's all right. But I know very clearly that this is not the purpose of life. I will try to have quality chanting and understanding that whatever I am getting by material endeavor is going to coming to my end and I am not going to get any satisfaction out of it. If one is clear on that point, and then if one is chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one gets much different result. So the first case, one will not get much access to the scriptures. The same knowledge, one will not get much access to the scriptures. One will not be able to go deeper. It is guaranteed. And on the other side, if one is more sincere and one is able to control one's material desires, it can come to the mind, one is controlling that and preaching to our own mind, then one gets a much deeper sense of the scriptures. So it is very much subjected to our own consciousness. And that's where Krishna consciousness becomes very dynamic process. It is not a static process. And that's why devotees say we can read the scriptures again and again. Why is it possible? Because each time we read, we can go deeper and deeper. So it is not like, I have done the first canto of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. I have studied Bhagavatam. Or I have done Bhakti Shastri. I have done Bhagavad Gita. It doesn't work like that. In other words, in Bhakti Shastri, in the Shastric studies, we do some analysis. We have some tools of analysis, which are good. But that's not the aim of Shastric study. That is only a beginning step to help us to understand, analyze. For example, why Arjuna didn't want to fight. So it's an important piece of information. Arjuna didn't want to fight. Why? Good. We can tell, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But just by knowing that, we haven't understood the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It is far deeper than that. There is much more than that. Are we able to see this Arjuna's reasons in our own life and in this world? That's the next question. So Shastric study, it is good, very important, but that is only at the beginning. It is familiarizing us, and of course it is giving us some realization of Shastra, but that is only a beginning. The Shastric study never stops. It's a lifetime process. So these are some hand-holding, that's all, which are very important, but just hand-holding. So the understanding of Shastra and applying and realizing is a lifetime process. And as time progresses, we can know how the same verses of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam are making more sense to us. That's why, if we want to go deeper in our Krishna consciousness, we need to have dependency on Krishna. I explained, just somehow or other getting rounds done and chanting with dependency are different. Chanting with dependency, doing devotion service with dependency on Krishna is very important. I am dependent on you. I need you. That's quite a deeper feeling, and that is very important in the devotees. If we simply try to do any service or any sadhana, I repeat, with sincerity, then naturally dependency will come, because we realize that we cannot do it by our own strength. Just trying to chant sincerely 16 rounds, hearing 16 rounds, we realize that, I cannot do it by my own strength. You can try to do any service. After some time, mind will start playing up. So then if you want to pursue and if you want to do that service in a deeper way, one has to depend on Krishna. That's why service or sadhana with dependency on Krishna is very important. And that dependency will purify us. And it will take ourselves to the next level of Krishna consciousness. So Krishna consciousness, it's a continuing process. It's a deepening process always. And what are the determining factors for our level of Krishna consciousness? Of course, it is based on our stages of bhakti, the quality of chanting, the offenses that we are committing, the quality of remembrance that we have about Krishna, the mentality of selfishness, I and mine, and the influence of lower gunas, as it is mentioned by Rajas and Tamas, and also higher guna like Sattva. All these things are factors influencing our stages of bhakti, where we are placed. And depending on that, we have different levels of access to scriptures. So this is what our scriptures are giving. And in this verse 7, there is this fantastic description of Anantadev is presented. The transcendental form of Anantadev, right? What can we see? He is a snake. Anantadev, if you see, is a multi-hooded snake. But the description here is fantastic. He is very beautiful. He is wearing garland. He has blue clothes. He has his plow. Think about him, a snake. And one may say it is just far out. Is it true? Even the description of Matsyadev in Bhagavatam is amazing. Matsyadev is the fish incarnation. He is considered as an emblem of beauty. He's an emblem of beauty. So Matsyadev manifests beauty. So we think, a fish manifest beauty? So attractive this fish was. Similarly, here Anantadev is also very attractive, very beautiful. How can we accept that? Yes, this is beyond matter. This knowledge is beyond matter. And anything is possible. See here, he wears golden belt around his waist and a Vaijayanti garland of ever fresh tulasi blossom around his neck. See, he has Vaijayanti garland, he has tulasi manjaris, and bees intoxicated by the honey-like fragrance of the tulasi flowers hum very sweetly around the garland, which thus become more and more beautiful. See, this is a description of the Lord. With a material consciousness, who can accept this? Impossible. A serpent being decorated by this way. And that's why the knowledge from parampara is very important. Parampara knowledge will establish the right understanding in our heart, and it will develop the right faith. Anantadev is the Supreme Lord, of course, and in this case, generally the Anantadev who holds the universe is a Shakti-Avash avatar. He's a Jiva empowered by the Supreme Lord. At the same time, the Anantadev, on him, Vishnu lies down. He is actually expansion of the Lord. So this Anantadev, who is under the bottom of the universe, is Shakti-Avash avatar. So it's a Jiva empowered to act in that capacity. And that Anantadev is glorious because he preaches Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So here we are hearing the glories of Anantadev. This Anantadev preaches Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. He gives purport to Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, which was heard by Kumaras. We can hear in the third canto of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Sanat Kumara and other Chadush Kumaras, they heard the purports of Bhāgavatam from this Anantadev. And these Sanat Kumaras and other Sanakadis, they spoke to Sankhya Rishi. Sankhya Rishi spoke this Bhāgavatam to Parashara Muni and Brihaspati. So we can see we have two lines of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam coming. One coming from Lord Brahma to Narada Muni to Vyasadev, and another Bhāgavatam coming from Anantadev to the Kumaras to Sankhya Muni to Parashara to Vyasadev. We can see multiple lines coming. And all are there in our Bhāgavatam, what we are reciting. Everything is in there. And that's why Anantadev is a glorious person. He's holding the universe and he's impregnated with transcendental knowledge which he awarded to the Kumaras. Here, there is a very interesting description of how Sankarshana, Anantadev, removes all the ignorance is given. I remember our Mahatma Prabhu, he asks always this question, how Lord Shiva removes ignorance of the living entities. That is actually answered in this verse. Sankarshana, what he does, it's mentioned if one is hearing this, if one hears the glories of Anantadev in the disciplic succession, as it is mentioned in the purport, we can hear the glories of Anantadev from our disciplic succession, and we do accept that. If one hears this knowledge from the disciplic succession, and if one does meditate on Sankarshana, then the Lord enters the heart, and then he cuts to pieces the heart knots within the heart. What are the heart knots? That of the material nature, which has been tied tightly since time immemorial. So that heart knot always refers to ignorance in Shastra. Hridaya Granthi is referring to ignorance specifically. Whenever the term Hridaya Granthi is used, it is referring to ignorance. So that's where it is mentioned. Heart knot within the heart, which has been tied tightly since time immemorial by the desire to dominate the material nature through fruitive activities. What is that ignorance? By that ignorance, one wants to do fruitive activities. So that is cut into pieces. How the Lord enters the heart. The same meaning as Shrinutam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayantastohya Bhadrani Vidhurnoti Suhur Satam. So that Suhur Satam. Suhrit Satam. Satam Suhrit. Satam means of the devotee. Suhrit, he is a friend, well-wisher of the devotee. So he enters the heart and he does the purification. We cannot purify our heart. Just by hearing we can get purification because the Lord is entering. The sound vibration is non different from Krishna, so He can purify us. We cannot purify our heart. Can we purify our heart? No. Not possible. The Lord can do that. There is this pastime where Ramanujacharya, great Acharya in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, he was having a debate with a Mayavadi. And that debate went on for few days. Both were quoting scriptures and establishing their viewpoint. So Ramanujacharya was defending Vaishnavism and then establishing Vaishnavism, and at the same time he was attacking Mayavad philosophy coming from the Shankarites. But this Mayavadi, he started quoting verses and he started establishing the Mayavadi philosophy in such a way that at one point Ramanujacharya started thinking, I may even get defeated. So then he went back. He prayed to the Lord, what can I do now? Because looks like I'm going to defeat. So next day is the final day of the debate. Looks like I'm going to get defeated. Then the Lord came in the dream and told him, you have to, I forgot the name of the Acharya, you have to read the commentary of this particular Acharya, and then you will be able to defeat him. And the next day, Ramanujacharya went, he read the commentary, he went for the argument, but just seeing the effulgence of Ramanujacharya, this Mayavadi surrendered. He didn't have to even argue. So this is the power of the Lord. So actually the purification is done by the Lord. We cannot purify ourselves. The Lord is doing that. How He does that? But out of His causeless mercy, He can enter the heart and He can purify. And that is mentioned here. Sankarsana, He enters the heart and He does purify. So whatever purification, it is done by the Lord. And so we have to obtain this knowledge from the disciplic succession. Otherwise it is not going to function. Prabhupada explains always why Bhagavad Gita as it is making devotees. And other Bhagavad Gitas are not making devotees. Because there has to be a proper sambandha, jnana, so proper knowledge of connection to Krishna, proper sambandha, proper abhidaya, and then prayojana. If sambandha or the connection is understood wrongly, then one is not going to get the prayojana, one is not going to get the result. So as simple as that. That's the reason any simple devotee can understand even the deepest knowledge in Krishna consciousness, can have depths of realization simply by hearing from the spiritual master and acting according to that. So this is a contribution of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada presented this bona fide knowledge in great depth. In great depth. The amount of literatures that Srila Prabhupada has given is just simply amazing. So that is our good fortune, and that is a good fortune for the whole world. These glories of Ananta are being described in this Bhagavatam, and we are given sufficient understanding to know that, as it is mentioned here, Narada is glorifying the Lord in the assembly of Lord Brahma, using his tumburu or along with this Gandharva tumburu by chosen poetry, chosen verses. The Lord is Uttama Shloka. And that knowledge is available for us because we are coming in the same disciplic succession. And through that, we can purify ourselves. So I conclude and ask if there are any questions or comments. Okay. Thank you very much. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत देव की जय. Krishna. They're considering, I think.